Yeah. Back like we never left.
Yes, sir.
So actually we did leave y'all, man. We ain't do an episode last week. So we apologize for that.
We left for a little bit. I mean,
we try.
I hope that's not going to be like a habit.
I know, right? We hit like every other week or something, man. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not with it, but life hits you, man. Life hits you in different ways, and then you just got to deal with it. You know what I'm saying?
Slim, life hits you like Tyson 88, fam.
Word. That's serious too. That's serious.
Off the 90 seconds, right?
Yo, Michael Spink status.
Yeah.
Off the
Remember
Michael
that joint?
Spinks with the dinger socks.
God.
You know what I'm saying? Word up.
Hey, I miss Mike Tyson fighting, bro. I don't know. Maybe it's me. I think
that's why everybody went to watch him at 50-something to go fight again? Because everybody just misses him. It's the nostalgia.
Yeah. Hey, you know what I miss too? I think I miss the seriousness of the dude, right?
Yeah.
Like Mike Tyson was not playing around, fam.
The stare down was always popping. The stare down in the beginning of the fight. Like you could tell almost how the fight was going to go depending on if the dude looked at Tyson or gave him any kind of play or if he was scared.
Right,
you could tell.
right. Now, he wasn't playing. Tyson wasn't playing. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Cross Examine. We are back to the grill again.
Yes.
The grill again. Back to the grill again. The grill again. This is season 5, episode 13. This supposed to be
Is that the right one?
I think it's 13, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right.
It's 13. This is supposed to be the unlucky number. For y'all superstitious people out there, you need to repent of being superstitious. Word. But we here, man. We back, man. Glad to be back. We got a great show today. We got a great show. We gonna get it in today. I've been waiting for this show. We've had shows like this before, but this particular show with the special guest I'm gonna bring on in just a second, I've been waiting to have this in light of what's happening in the culture. We're gonna get to that in a second. But first things first, I pop up. Philly in the Super Bowl.
I mean, everything is green right now. You know what I'm saying? I'm like a leprechaun out here.
I see you. I thought it was. I thought it was the Avengers, the Hulk, man. I thought you was in there off the. But now that's what's up, man. So how y'all feeling out there, man? How y'all feeling out in PA, man?
I'm feeling good.
Right. Now you strike me. Now I'm a depressed, realistic Washington Commanders season ticket holder, right?
Right.
I'm realistic. So I want to ask
you as somebody different. Okay. Tell me.
So I want to ask you, are you a realistic fan or you just a fanboy? A boy?
Nah, I'm definitely a realistic fan. I'm like, I went to watch the game actually with my pops. He's a diehard 49ers fan. Like, what up, Chris?
Right.
So much of a 49er fan that he got the flag in the front yard. You know what I mean? He puts it up every season. Like,
what's
that's
good,
how
Grant?
he gets down. So anyway, I went to go watch the joint with him because I'm thinking I just want to see a good game. You know what I mean? And my pops be talking trash, so I had to subject myself to the possibility of having to eat a lot of garbage while my team might have been losing. But the opposite happened. You know what I'm saying? Like I told cats, Purdy gonna get eaten by the defense. It's just what it is.
Yeah, he
and
did.
He got taken out right away.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, listen.
Gone. I mean, what? And I mean, I don't think he's been hit like that all season, fam.
Probably not.
Because did they lose a game since he became the QB?
No,
I don't think they lost.
They won 7 straight.
Yeah.
He
got hit, and then that was it. Y'all was playing with a third string, playing against. Then he got hurt. You had McCaffrey out there calling the
fam.
Omaha. You had McCaffrey.
Almost. Josh Johnson came in. It wasn't looking very good for him. You know what I'm saying?
Man, that's crazy.
I felt bad for doing. Then I looked at the list of like teams he's played on.
Yeah.
He's been on Mads. He's been on like the Niners since like 4 times, fam.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Now I said, I kind of wanted to see a better game, but so I was torn because I was more leaning towards San Francisco because one is my wife's favorite team, even though she faked all season and didn't even support her team. But it was also, I go there a lot, man. That's like a second city to me. So
vacation home,
preach there. I go there. So like I love the city, man. So I was glad for them. But I had to be honest though. I also was good with Philly. See, I'm a Skins fan. Sorry for the politically correct. I'm a Skins fan, right?
Word.
But I respect 2 things: the game and my division. So if we're not going to win it, then I want my division to represent. I'm not a hater, like I don't want none of them to win it.
Right.
Because for y'all to have win it, y'all had to play us twice. Which means we sharpened y'all to get y'all ready. And we gave y'all first loss. So it's like for us, it's like boom. But also, man, just to be honest, we Black History Month and all that. But even if it wasn't, I like a black quarterback in the Super Bowl. So I was, he's good. And so just from that reality, I would have been good either way. Right. I'd have been good either way. And I'm glad. I want to see this brother. Now it's two black. The first time ever, two black quarterbacks. Even though I think Patrick Mahomes is like a fifth black or something.
Is this the first time ever that two black quarterbacks are facing off in the Super Bowl?
That's what they're saying.
Wow, that's a bigger deal than the brothers facing each other. Yeah. I mean, the Kelsey brothers is dope. Like that's the dope thing. But yeah, fam, with two black quarterbacks facing each other for the first time, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, man, that is. I'm excited, man. It's gonna be an interesting Super Bowl. And I'm glad. I mean, I think you know what I like too. I like when a team deserves to be there. Like we got to be clear, whether you like Philly or not, they ran the gauntlet this season.
They have
the gauntlet. I mean, they deserved. They were clearly the best team in the NFL this season.
And still getting snubbed for stuff. I mean, the coach didn't even get considered for Coach of the Year. That's crazy.
Now you know what would be crazy, bro. You know what would be crazy if.
What up, Brandon? Brandon.
Yeah, there you go. KC
over here.
Hey, Brandon. Hey, look, I don't know if you saw Brandon. Look, Brandon was on Facebook.
With the cigar and everything. I peeped that joint.
We see you, Brandon. We see you with the cigar at the Kansas City game. Like, what now?
It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one.
Nah, I'm with that, man. Love Brandon, though. Brandon is, he's solid, man. Solid. Look, Brandon said, can't wait to see y'all next Sunday, boy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's going to be fun, man. Y'all should watch that joint live together or something.
I'm starting to sweat right now, getting a little bit hype. You know what I'm saying?
I tell you what, if Andy Reid wins, then it'll be his all-time winningest coach in the playoffs, playing the team that he won his first Super Bowl with.
He ain't win the Super Bowl with the
Eagles. No. I mean, he's the coach, y'all, but y'all didn't. He didn't win the Super Bowl.
He coaches for like 14 years.
Coached for a minute. Yeah. So he's beating his former team.
He's the only coach to win 11 playoff appearances with two different teams.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's bananas.
So I like that kind of history. So I don't. Yeah. I'm rooting for the Eagles though.
Gotta root for the Birds, man.
Yeah,
just
my division.
For me, you gotta root for the Birds.
I got you. My homies is right there. My homie's there. So let's get into one topic before we jump into our episode. I'm telling you, we got an episode for y'all. We got to get into As the World Burns, fam. I have no idea. We're just going to pull up one thing because I really want to devote the episode to our guest and talk through all the stuff that's going on.
Gotcha.
But we got to talk about this, man. As the World Burns. So apparently it's not funny. I'm only laughing at the absurdity of evil. Right, I'm not laughing because it's funny, but basically, a woman named Sharonda Beam, I think it's like Sharonda Bama. She killed a woman who looked like her so that she could fake her own death. What? So she was going on Instagram, finding women who looked like her, trying to meet up with them, all right? And then would fake her own death. So she met a woman, killed her, left her in her car, and her man fled, and they thought it was her because it was the car and she was similar, until they did the autopsy and found out it wasn't her, and they ended up apprehending her and the guy she was with.
How important was this person that she needed to fake her own death?
I don't think she was important. I think she owed a couple corporate credit cards that were important.
That's what I'm saying. That's important. Because to somebody, she's real important. You know what I'm saying?
Now she's the imported property of whatever prison that she's now in for that. So
that's crazy.
For life. Like, that's just crazy, bro. Listen, man. If you got bad,
die for looking like somebody,
just like you dying because you got bad credit.
No, I'm saying. I'm saying she killed somebody because they look like her. You know what I mean? That's bananas. Just because you look like somebody, you're going to get murked.
listen, if you have bad credit, there's some numbers that you can call.
Right.
But don't do anything extreme if you have bad credit. This is ridiculous.
It's not worth
like
it.
this. This
That's
woman's
crazy.
going to spend the rest of her life in prison, and possibly in eternity if she doesn't give her life to the Lord because she had bad credit. Like it's just crazy, bro. And this is what I get back to. Like just in our country. Look, Chris just popped and said just without something I was about to say.
Yeah,
Look at
I
this.
peeped that.
Chris just said that joint. Look, for the love of money, people would do. In this country, because we're a capitalistic society, money is often how people's worth is defined. Right. And the lack of money will drive people insane as if you can't live without it. And I just think, wow, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's a whole episode right there, fam.
That's an episode that we got coming. As the world burns. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's episode, I had to dig into my bag and pull out. I've talked about this brother before, but I've never said his name or introduced you to him or anything like that. But I had to pull out the stops for this one in light of the most recent events with Tyre Nichols. And I wanted to talk to somebody who would be, as best as he could, objective about what it's like to be a police officer and all of it. So we're going to get into the mind of police from a police officer's perspective, who's been in the trenches and who understands what it's like to be in those kind of scorpion units. And we'll talk about what we mean in just a second. But for right now, we'll bring on the homie Rashod Coleman is with us, ladies and gentlemen.
Fellas. How's it going?
Good, man. Rashod, glad you could make it, man. I've been waiting to do this for a minute, man, because me and you, we go back a little bit. We might see each other on Sunday,
Yeah, for sure.
So but I wanted to bring you here, and first we're gonna get to know you a little bit. But let me say a little bit about why you're here and what we're talking about. Obviously, the world is aware, for the most part, of 5 officers at the beginning, January 10th, I think. A video was released. The camera body cam footage was released, and it showed basically the brutal murder of 29-year-old dude, bro.
It's crazy.
29-year-old Tyre Nichols was brutalized. I mean, there's no really way around it. There were 5 officers that initially were 5 black officers that were fired and charged with, I think, 2nd-degree murder, if I'm not mistaken. But then, as the days went on, there was 2 other officers that were there. One white officer who's heard on the tape saying, "I hope we stomp him out." That's a white guy. He was eventually fired and charged. And then you got 2 EMTs and the firemen were also charged, because when they showed up, they evidently didn't rush to this man's death. Now, if you've watched it, I follow these things a lot. If you watch this story, you'll hear this is sort of the seesaw of the cultural framework of how we process these things. So you got, on the left, you got white supremacy. This is due to racism. Even though the officers were black, they're perpetuating a white supremacy. And so that's a typical, left trope of white supremacy. And if you're on the right, if you're conservatives, you're coming from this is what happens when you try to defund the police and you want to get black police officers hired. You lower the standards for good policing because you complained about it. And so this is what happens, I did a video on this the other day, so I'm not going to go into all that, because today, with that in mind, I want to talk to you, Rashod, and talk about a little bit about your story. You were former Philadelphia PD.
Yeah.
And for many of you who don't know, Philadelphia is they gangsta up there. Philadelphia,
to say the least, right?
You're gonna hear some stories tonight. Philadelphia, Meek Mill and them, right? These dudes ain't playing. North Philadelphia has been for years one of the most dangerous cities in America. I mean, you got North Philly, you got Chicago, Baltimore, DC now is getting back up there. Gary, Indiana, a couple places, Alabama, stuff like that. It's just getting crazy. And so Rashod, you were in Philly PD. You were there for a minute. But first, I want to ask you, start off, just give us a little bit of your background. What made you get into just policing, law enforcement? Like, what was that? What was the journey like for you?
Sure. So typical African American story. Unfortunately, grew up in a single parent household. My mother raised me and two of my older brothers. For a long time, my father was in jail. He spent 27 years
Wow.
incarcerated. Just got out about 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. So he's put away for a long time. And out there hanging with friends, hanging on a corner, just doing nothing, just being out there. And I've been stopped more times than you can imagine. I don't forgot about all the times. You know how it is when you're out in a high crime, high drug neighborhood, poverty neighborhood in Wilmington, Delaware. Stopped so many times I can't even remember. I mean, there were times where I would have a new outfit on as like a middle schooler, and I would say, I'm not going out to hang with my friends because I don't feel like getting stopped. I don't want to get searched in my new clothes or my new shirt.
Hey, people don't know this, but Wilmington, Delaware is like gangster too, though.
Yeah, Wilmington is
Wilmington. They kill up there. That's a kill zone.
Yeah. It's a center hub for the DCs and for the drug trafficking trade.
Right.
For those who know the East Coast, 95 runs straight through Wilmington, Delaware. So it's an easy stop for drug smugglers and things of that sort. Either going to Philadelphia, New York, or coming down to Baltimore, DC, or headed down south.
Right.
So it's caught up right in the mix. And so I became a police officer. When I was young, I had some crazy dream about arresting, I think it was like a politician or something like that was turned his back on an inner city. And when I was in high school, I had a coach that was a county police officer, and he was a real good mentor to me. Kind of took me under his wing. He knew I didn't like cops. I didn't like police, things of that sort. But I liked him. And I liked him because he was always fair on a football field. When it came to education, things of that sort, he was just a guy that was, no matter who you was, he was fair to you. And went home one day and I told my mom I was thinking about joining the police force. And she was like, with our history with the police and my father, she was like, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do it.
Right.
But then I said, that's not even the worst. That's not even the worst news. I'm going to be a cop in Philadelphia. And she's like, what? What do you mean you're going to be a cop?
Because they're close, right? How close is Philly and Wilmington?
30 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, 30 minutes. That's a lot closer, yeah.
Yeah, 30 minutes away. So that's why a lot of us are Eagles fans, because we're right up the street from Philadelphia.
Right.
And yeah, I went in with an open mind. I talked to my coach about it. He said it'll be good for you. It'd be a good thing. And the one reason why I really wanted to be a law enforcement officer is because even though cops were jumping out on us and getting out of the cars and stopping us, I understood that the presence that they had, that when they spoke, everybody listened. And so I said, what if I can have that same uniform on? How can I affect the same kids that look like me and come from these neighborhoods in a positive way? So that's why I decided to go ahead and join law enforcement.
So what's the process like? I know that there's an academy and all of that, but what's the process like to become an officer? Like, do you fill out an application? You wait to be like, what's that journey like to actually get to the academy?
Yeah, so you have an application that you fill out, and then you have different layers of things that you have to do. So they're just trying to essentially eliminate bad apples throughout the process. So you get in, you do a written test. If you can't pass the written test, then you're eliminated. They check your background. If you have something in your background, you're eliminated. You have a polygraph test, which is a lie detector test. You go in, they hook you up to things. They ask you a bunch of questions about your past. And if you can't pass it, you're eliminated. You have an interview. Once you do the interview, that background investigator says if they want to keep you or if they don't. And they also go on your social media too, which is something that's pretty new. Is they tell you to log into your social media right there in front of you. So they're like, so you got to be careful with you let other people tag on your page, because I know a couple guys over there. They're like, that's just what somebody tagged on my page.
Yeah, that's why they make you log in right there in front of them and check out everything.
There. I mean, you had guys and girls,
and you probably don't know that coming, so you just be chilling.
Exactly. You don't know what's coming, so they just tell you, do you have a Facebook? All right, here, log in. You forgot the username? All right, hit forgot your username, and you got to get in there because you're trying to prove to them you're a good person. So if you just get up and walk out, then that could be the end of you. And then the last thing they do is they have a psychological exam, which I thought was an amazing process. It's going in, sitting down with somebody. Of course, everybody's going in there and saying, I'm not going to talk about this, or I'm not going to talk about that. But you find yourself talking about things that you never thought you would talk about. And once you get past that, they do a report on you, and they say either yes or no, and then they give you a time to report to the academy.
What's in terms of length of time? What's that process like from beginning to okay, I'm in the academy?
I think it was about 3 months.
Okay.
That process, yeah.
So you're doing a lot in 3 months' time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're kind of back and forth. Okay. Of course, during that time, you can't have any police interactions. Anytime you interact with the police, you have to tell, even if it's just somebody pull you over for blowing a stop sign, you have to call it to your investigator, tell your investigator, hey, I got a ticket or I got into an accident. This is what happened. And then they'll call the police officer who either stopped you or wrote the ticket and talk to them about what kind of person you are. To go along with that, they also talk to your family, some close family members. They'll go back sometimes and talk to your teachers and things of that sort, depending on what kind of investigator you have. So,
right.
So they seem to know very well who they're going to be hiring.
You would think so.
Yeah.
But like anything else, when you get in there, you'll look at some people and say, man, how did this guy get through that through that
right.
process?
Right.
No shade thrown, but it's just like,
right.
Okay, how did this guy get through? But yeah,
the system seems to be set up that way for them to know. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And
ideally,
we'll talk a little bit more about that. Ideally, it's set up in that kind of way that you're going to get rid of people that are not supposed to be police officers.
Got you.
All right, so you get in, you get the call, you're going to the academy. What's that like for you? So here you are, like you're closer to, being a cop. You're in the academy. What's the training like? And what things surprised you? And what things were you like, wow, this is kind of like, what was like, man, this is crazy. Like, was there something that caught you off guard or was it like, okay, I expected this?
So when you first get there, you had to stand in this line and sort of like the military, right? You get there, you don't know where you're going. You have a uniform on and some guy will just be yelling at you, get in line, shut up, be quiet, stand in line. So you're in there, you're standing in line. And the first thing I noticed is that it wasn't a lot of people that looked like me there, right? There were a couple, like 2 Hispanics, maybe 3 other African-American males, but it was a class of like 60, right? So
wow.
we're just all
That's a
there.
big class, right? That's pretty big.
Pretty big class. And you get there and you do training before you go there also. So you have to pass a PT test, which is like a 1.5 mile run and I think like 100-meter sprint or something like that, and a couple push-ups. Not too bad. And so you get in there, and then right from the gate, we had a class, which was our first class was a cultural diversity class, and it was probably one of the best classes that I've taken there. And it was good. It was because it was run by a guy purposely that was a guy that was getting ready to retire, and he said that. He said the reason why I can run this class is because I'm getting ready to retire. So if I get sued, I'm on my way out the door anyway. Which I thought was a little weird. So he would go through and you would talk to he would say, okay, we're going to do stereotypes, right? I want the stereotypes about Black people, and Black people can't answer. So everybody else except for Black people can answer. So you'll put all the stereotypes up on the wall.
That is kind of interesting, right? Yeah.
Say single, somebody will raise their hand and say they all been raised by their moms. And so they'll say, okay, single parent household. Somebody else will say they're good dancers, good dancers, good basketball player, right. Good basketball player. Then he would go through after that and he would point out the Black, me and like 3 other guys. He would say, well, were you raised by a single parent? So 2 of us might have been and 2 of us weren't. So he would say, okay, well, that's not true about everybody, right? So he would essentially do that with each group with white males. We had one Asian guy in the class, and with Asian males, they would say something. Real funny story with him is I think his stereotypes were bad driver, a lot of people live in the house, and there was one more grandmother cooks every night or something like that. And so they went and they asked him, well, are you a good driver? And he would say, yeah. And they say, okay, well, how can we measure that? And then somebody said, well, when's the last time you got a ticket? So they're like, when's the last time you got a ticket? And he's looking around. He's like, 2 days ago. So they're like, all right, that was true. And then they said, how many people live in your house? And he says, oh, just me, my mom, and my 2 brothers. And they say, that's it? He says, and my aunt, my couple cousins, my grandma lives there. Right. So his was kind of like off the mark, but for the most part, it was a good class. Yeah, so that was a real good start. That's like the first day of the academy right there.
Why
about opening. I was just
going
to say that kind of opened the floor up for offense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like right away to trigger people to see who's going to withstand getting offended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
wow.
and that's what it was all for. Even just like the yelling at us part. So they would yell at you and say, "Get in the line," and then he would say, "Okay, we need 5 lines of, I don't know, 5 lines of however many 60 is." So you have to run and do it. Then we say, "Take 10 seconds. If you don't make, of course you're not going to make it. Get back in line." So you just running back and forth, and you had like 4 or 5 people that just quit. Like, I'm tired of this. I don't like getting yelled at this much. So they were
just off the route, just like that.
Yeah, right off the rip. We had 2 people pass out in line because you're standing there for like an hour, like hours. So 2 people passed out, and it was definitely a wake up call. Yeah.
So now you might have answered this because what Strack alluded to, but was when he said, "If I get sued, I'm on my way out." Was it because he was going to do the diversity stuff and people might get offended?
Yeah. So he was saying, "I'm here to tote the line, essentially. Okay. I'm here to try to bring some things out of you and have you see some things that you might not see about yourself." Whereas somebody could take offense to it. Somebody could say, that guy's being racist or that guy's being biased on my first day. I'm gonna sue him. So he was saying it doesn't matter because I'm getting ready to leave anyway. Right. And this was a great teacher at that point. And then he ended the class saying that, his son had a best friend named Dion. His son's white. He's a white guy. So his son had a best friend named Dion. And he said Dion was like part of the family. He used to travel with us. He'd hang out with all of us. I had a daughter named Jenny, and he was like another brother. If she needed a ride home, he would come get her. He would come get my son, and he's like everything was cool. And he was like, and I was kind of prepared for my son to have a black girlfriend. But then he said, but when my daughter came in with a black boyfriend, things changed for me, and things came out of me that I didn't know, and it took me a while to kind of get over that. So. That was good. It was kind of a good ending of him saying, you have these views on how you think life is supposed to be and what life is going to be, and then when things get shooken up, you have some things inside of you that could potentially come out.
Listening to you though, I'm hearing like all these dope systems set up to make sure we have good people in this position. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like this. That's what the intention was. Yeah. Which is kind of missed. It's a missed point, I think, for me anyway.
Yeah.
So that leads me to this question. Go ahead, Rashod.
Yeah, I was going to say, in response to that class was probably the first half of the day, and then the next half of the day, you had another instructor come in, and that instructor said, "Yo, forget everything he said. You great hit the streets. Essentially, you need to be biased, right?" So it was like everything, and I was kind of older when I went in. I think I was like 26 or 27 years old. So most of the people in the class, they were younger, right? From the suburbs.
Very impressionable.
In the city, things of that sort.
Hold on. This is important. Hold on. No, this is what you just said is really important because many of us, when you see a police, because police are always in a position of authority, unless they look drastically younger than you, you're not realizing that reality, what you just said. So you said I was one of the older ones. Yeah. At 27.
Right.
So you're talking about young guys. I'm sure there was maybe some girls there too. But young people being trained to basically make life or death decisions with always entering every situation with a deadly weapon. And they're really young people.
Yeah.
These are not like
right. So Philadelphia, they're a city that has a very, very strenuous relationship with the community. That goes way back in history. I don't know if you guys know, but the first bombing on U.S. citizens, I think the first one was in Oklahoma, and then the second one was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with the MOVE movement.
A house.
Yeah, a house that burned up the whole block, which was crazy.
It was crazy.
From the air, right? Wow. And so what Philadelphia has been doing as of recent is they've been putting in processes and different things inside of the system to have, I don't want to say more mature police officers. So you have to have 60 credits, right? And the reason that is because they said if a person at least has some college, then they're less willing to take bribes on the street and do things that'll mess up, their career, essentially.
Right.
So all these little things have been put in place to kind of just not have your, 17-year-old guy, he just left graduation in high school. You give him a badge with 32 bullets and telling them, good luck, go out there.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah,
sounds wild.
But for a long time, that's how it was. There was no credits needed. So you have guys leaving out at 18, going through 2 weeks of training in the academy, and they're hitting the street. So now they've made it long. Now it's 6 months long now inside the academy.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so that guy says, man, forget everything you heard. You got to be biased. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, you alluded to the fact that there weren't many black men in there. It was largely white people, white men, I would imagine, were the large.
Yeah.
So what about the training? Like, because I know you shared with me something a couple years ago, and that helped me understand, and I've used it plenty of times to help other people. So I want to get to that. But what I want to ask a general question and then get to something specific. When you get, how long is the engaging with sort of the public? I'm sure there's a variety of ways, but what is that aspect of the police training like when you engage with the public?
During our time in the academy?
Yeah.
So during your time in the academy, you might engage with the public one time.
Okay.
Maybe. So you're never out on the streets, at all.
So the first time you really are in a situation where you're already, you've gone through the training, you don't have any, you're not practicing any of that in between.
No, none, not at all. I mean, you have a little bit of role playing that you do, but for the most part, your engagement with the community is you watching videos about police making mistakes out on the street, right? A police turning his back to somebody and getting shot in the back, or a police officer with his hands in his pocket and the guy punches him in the face. And those things, right? Those things are getting ingrained in your head because they're telling you, you're getting ready to go to the craziest part of the world and you need to be on edge 24/7. They used to tell us, trust no one when you're out on the street. Don't trust anybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you use the word like kind of ingrained. So it sounds like the training and even the trust no one, the training is you're getting ingrained means a repetition of, I mean, if you're watching all these videos of negative things happening to police and they're telling you don't trust anyone, that explains why police come out and they're on edge and kind of, it almost seems like, if I'm hearing you right, and please feel free to correct or push back on anything I'm saying, it almost feels like the training component, at least where you were, was prepared you were already on edge before you interacted with people.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it is. I mean,
so you're already there. You're like, I don't trust nobody. So you're on edge as a part of the training, not even as a part of the duress of being an officer. That's a different thing, right? That's after a while it wears on you. You can, but we're talking about out the gate. You're already trained to essentially be on edge towards the people that you're to protect and serve, pretty much.
Yeah. So there are several videos, and I've been through two academies, and there's several videos that just always pop up. And one is it's a guy who has his daughter. He's on a highway, and he gets stopped by a female police officer, and the police officer she's talking to him, and he's talking. They're conversing about something, and she finds out he has a warrant, and she tries to arrest him. Boom! He punches her, knocks her out, jumps on top of her, almost beats her to death. And that video is shown. Not to say that that they shouldn't show the video, right? But to show it to a person that's never been in the city, doesn't have a whole lot of interaction with African American males, has his own biases, as we all do. To have him see that video, what's he going to think in his head when he interacts with a guy who says, "Okay, let me get my wallet for you," or let me go do this, or he moves a little too fast? What do you think his response is going to be? After watching videos like that, being a person that's not from that area,
especially when they're telling you not to trust nobody, like don't trust anyone. And then, I mean, obviously the implication would be the only people you could trust are the other people with you in your uniform.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right?
The
so they're automatically creating a division between
100%.
Can't trust anybody except the person with you in uniform. I mean, I struggle to see how that aligns with protect and serve. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and it goes back to kind of what you said earlier, which was the system is set up for it to be good interactions, right? They're set up to have good people come to the system for the interactions to be good. Like, for example, all Philadelphia police officers have to walk the beat. The first, I want to say it's like 4 months of their career with Philadelphia police. So you got.
Is it a certain area or like?
Yeah, you're put in the worst possible area that you can
walk
be
in the beat. Wow.
Yeah. If anybody out there ever knows anything about Philadelphia, you have Kensington area, which is known to have the best heroin, in the country. North Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, Southwest Philadelphia. You're put into the worst areas, but they put you there so that you can build relationships with the community. Right. It's called community policing. So you're there to know who the shop owner is, know who the grandmother is that's just trying to
build some familiarity,
raise her kids. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Familiarity.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point of it, right? Is to do that. So then you have the system aspect of it, but then you have the aspect of it where, the upper management wants you to have what they call activity, meaning they want you to stop people. They want you to get drug arrest. They want you to get gun arrest. And my thing was, well, how can we do both? Right? I don't know. I'm not from the area. I don't know if this guy is a drug dealer or if he's just a school kid out there, the way we all were out there at one point in time. I can't do both. So I just wish they would get away from the activity part of it and let the system be what it is, which is be out there building those relationships with the community.
So you're talking about activity, you mean like the productivity as far as a work environment is concerned? Like they have certain expectations of productivity.
Almost like quotas. Like we need
quotas that have to be met.
So quota, to use the word quota is illegal inside of the police, police realm. But that being said, right, it's not hard to find out that what they want you to be doing, right? When you're out there. If you're coming back saying, I didn't stop anybody all day, but I made a bunch of relationships. The other officer, he stopped 10 people. And
he's considered a good cop.
He's considered a good cop, but he's also going to be put in places that he wants to be in, right? He's going to get into a car where you're going to be walking on that Friday. They could have threw you into the car. So now in your mind, you're like, well, man, should I be getting activity like him? Because I
got bust heads. I got bust heads.
I want to get inside the car too. So.
Now I want to, because I want people who are listening to this, whether you're watching live or going to catch it later. You said something that I think is important. That I want to pull this out a little bit. You said on one side they want you to be in the community, walking the beat. Like there's the impression on one side that we want you to make relationships so people trust you, and because obviously I can say this, I know this. A lot of police work is people telling on who did what.
Yeah.
Like y'all don't know. Columbo's a great TV show, but you don't know who killed who when you show up in the neighborhood.
Right.
As much as the streets say stop snitching, most of the rest are because somebody snitched.
Yes. Rival gang members.
Rival gang. Yep. You need to do that. So they want you to build those relationships, and that's the appearance. We want you out there. We're in the community. But on the flip side, they're telling you, be biased. Don't trust anyone. And you're seeing these videos of aggression, right? So it almost seems like, okay, on one side, we want to give the appearance that we want those relationships. But on another side, you'll be penalized if you put relationships over arrests, if you will. That.
So in the academy, you would have two types of instructors. You would have what's called your street instructor, and you would have your education instructor. So these two officers, if you could put these two officers on a pedestal, they didn't get along with each other, right? Because the street officer is saying, "Yo, get this shiny shoe, paper pushing dude out of here," right? The only reason why he's here is because he went to school, right? The academic. The paper pusher that he's talking about, he'll come into the class and tell you, listen, if you listen to those guys, you're gonna be locked up. Don't listen. So everybody, you'll hit it. It'll be like the same day. You'll have different, instructors that'll come in and teach you legal things about stopping people, and that will say, and you'll raise your hand and say, "Yo, this sergeant told us this," and they'll say, "Okay, that's gonna get you locked up. Don't do that."
So they're just contradicting each other.
Just contradicting each other.
And this is the training, though. This is the training. Like, this isn't like talking to a couple of police officers who've been on the force longer than you when you're out. This is the training. Like, you're getting, angel devil on either shoulder, right? Like,
Yeah, and it's I wouldn't say necessarily contradicting each other, because there will be gray areas.
Right.
There'll be gray areas. Okay, I smell weed. Can I search the vehicle? Okay, if I can search the vehicle, can I go into the trunk? So the legal guy would be telling you that no, stay away from it. If you smell weed on him and you have a reason to believe that, pull him out of the vehicle. Whereas the street cop would say, no, go in the car, pop the trunk, look in the trunk, go into the car, do this, essentially do whatever you want, right? You can justify it on paper because you smell weed. Whereas the legal guy who's been to law school, things and that sort, will tell you need to use caution when these things are happening, because you're violating someone's civil rights. And if I could go back for a second to what we were saying about, because I don't want people to misconstrue when I say some of the officers didn't have good relationship, or they didn't understand the street mentality, or understand inner city culture, so to speak. So towards the end of the training, we had kids from an alternative school come into the academy, and this is the one time we got to really interact with the community. So they set up this program where these kids came in. It was one of the under chiefs that set this program up, and they had this young white woman, a young black guy. They came in before the class started, and they said, we're going to bring you guys in the gym, and we're going to show you some things based on our studies, right? So they were like from Yale or something like that, some big school. But before we went in there, another sergeant came in. He said, hey, listen, you're going to have these bad ASS kids come in here. Don't let them talk to you any kind of way, right? These kids they're just there. They're going to be in trouble. Don't worry about these kids. Ignore what they're saying. Don't worry about it, right?
The same kids you inviting to be a part of this program.
Yeah, the same kids that the one of the chiefs is inviting in to program. So the sergeant tells you that, right? So at that point, people are on edge, right? Because they don't know what to expect with these kids coming in. So we go into the gym, and they show us this presentation. The young white woman and black guy show us a presentation on the skull and the brain, and they show us how not only mentally do young kids not understand what they're doing and understand the consequences, but physically. If you look at the skull, if you look at the brain where it's shaped right here, they're showing you the scientific, the scientific knowledge behind how we know that younger kids don't deal with consequences the way a 25-year-old man would.
Right? Is it true? So do they teach you like you don't develop your brain fully until frontal lobe until you're 25?
Yeah, frontal lobe. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly. Sorry, thanks for getting the words right. But that's exactly what they're trying to teach us, right? So they're trying to say, and what they ended off with, look, we're not telling you guys how to do your job. You're police officers. We're educators, right? We're scientists. We're not telling you how to do your job. We're just telling you when you interact with some of these kids, this is their brain. They're not thinking the way you're thinking, right? So then they leave out. The kids come in, and we have it's kind of like a rally where we get to talk back and forth. The kids talk about a rough life, how they grew up, where they're from, things of that sort. A couple of the cadets get to talk, and they also have officers there talk. And one real good example that the officers did from an officer standpoint is of course these kids are like, I hate the police. They shot my cousin, they shot the homie, whatever, right? They don't like police. So they're trying to break down, they're trying to not only capture to the kids that you have allies right here, but they're also trying to capture to the cadets that we have allies right there. So they did this drill where they had the kids be 14 and 15-year-olds. They said, okay, you guys are the cops now, right? You got 7 officers right there. They're now in the community. You have to go get them off of the steps. The guy that lives there, he just called the police, said he's trying to sleep. These guys are out front of his house being loud. So then you have these kids trying to go up Hey, can I talk
That's
to
a
you?
good. That's a good little exercise, though.
Like, man, get out of here, man. We ain't trying to hear that. Black Lives Matter, man. Get up out of here. So they're kind of playing it that way. So the kids, it was a fun game, and it helped them realize it. And a lot of them walked away like, yeah, that is kind of tough, man. You can't hit them or nothing like that. So that was a good thing. But then we got back to the room after everything was done, everything was over, and the sergeant that we had, he said, "Well, what did you guys think about the rally today, or the meeting?" And you had officers say, "Oh, it's just an excuse. They're just bad ASSs, and we're going to be locking them up one day." And we just went through a whole day, a whole 8 hours of us trying to build that bond between these young 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. And to hear it was remarkable, right? And then he asked me what I thought. And I said, well, at 14, 15 years old, you couldn't tell me anything either. I thought I could beat the world, at that age. So I'm not going to expect a kid like that, who probably had a rougher life than any of us will ever live, to think like a 25-year-old man. That's what they were teaching us. And looked me right in the eye. He said, "Rashod, you'll probably be arresting that kid one day." Right? Look me right in the eye. I couldn't believe it. And and that's why I say, at that point, I could understand that they just didn't understand the culture of people that were getting ready to go police when we get out of the academy. And this is 2 days before we left the academy.
Wow. Now, you kind of said this, but I'm just going to tell you what you told me a couple years ago that affected me. You had told me this one time where you said basically you were in a unit you were only a couple black dudes there, and you were saying that all of the training videos were basically of aggressive black males. And there were times where you and the other black men would look at each other like, man, like it's only them. Like there's nobody else but just aggressive black males. And I remember hearing that and thinking, that was the first time I heard a cop say, like, this is what some of the training is like, and now you're filling it out even more. Like the training is you seeing the worst. Like if I'm you, right? Because I'm from the street, but I would have been a perp, right? I would have been a perp. Right. But when I'm thinking, I know the streets. Like when I'm hearing you talk, and I'm trying to imagine the impact that would have on me if I'm going out. I'm not looking at these people that I need to protect and serve them. I'm looking at them as I need to protect them from hurting me. Like that's where the protect and serve is supposed to be the community. And some of them need protection sometimes because they scared and, like you said, they're young. But when I'm hearing you talk, it's helpful, but I'm also like, wow, why would many of the police officers, especially with you got the category of they're not from the community, different ethnicity, they got their own stereotypes. Them stereotypes go all the way back to 1619, right? Or 17, whatever you want to call it. 1915's that movie, that racist movie that kind of set the tone, Birth of a Nation. It set the tone for the way. So you get this, you basically are trained in the academy that black people are prone to violence and criminality. And these are the communities you're going in. You don't trust anybody, even though you spent time with them, probably laugh with them and all of that stuff. When they leave, the sentiment is like, who cares? I'm saying all this to say, because I know that the academy is not filled with Christians and things like that. But what I've always thought was missing from the police perspective is the humanity of these people. And it kind of like, you had the whole, during the slavery days, black people were 3/5 of the 3/5 of a human being was actually a legal it wasn't really meant to, I won't get into all that, but there was a sense of less than human beings, right? A lot of surgeries were done on black women, didn't give them any anesthesia, just treated them like they don't experience pain, they're not real people. I almost feel like, not in the most extreme way, but it sounds like some of the training prepares you for these aren't real people.
Yeah, I mean, like, you feel like you begin to feel like you're like ready to go to war. Right. I'm not a military person, and I've never been in the military. But you just have that. I don't know if you ever played football before, like right before the game when you're all dapping it up in the locker room, and you're like, that's how you feel when you get your uniform they put the badge on you, you kind of feel like, okay, here we go, y'all dapping each other up. Everybody's getting ready to go to their respective districts. And essentially you feel like that, like I'm ready to go to war. Right. Somebody's going to attack me on the first day. So
do you feel like there was occasionally an intentional, almost a retraining to take away any familiarity that you would have with the people? And I mean, in particular to like your ethnicity, as a black man, being in the street, do you feel like it was, or could you make the argument from your experience that there was an attempt to erase your blackness because now you a cop? You know what I'm saying? As far as relating to the people.
It was sort of like undertone, right? It was like, even if you're from a place like this, just understand it's a different world out there. Things like that. Like obviously me and a couple other guys are the only people he's talking to, when they say things like that. Right. So yeah, I can see that, but it's just it's that constant training. It's that constant. It's us versus them. I mean, one sergeant even called it a gang. He's like, "We got the biggest gang in Philadelphia."
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, gang. Like, what are we doing here? Gang.
It's interesting to take pride in something like that, because that's used more as a derogatory thing from the street. Like, where we're like, "Yo, that's the craziest gang out here." Right. You know what I'm saying? But they to take pride in that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I talked to the chief that put together that whole program with the younger kids after the meeting, and he was going through it with the city because he had asked for the hiring records to see how many black people were getting rejected compared to white people, or how many males were getting rejected, or how many females were getting rejected to males. So he was kind of like on his way out of the police department, so to speak. And one thing he said to me, I said, "Look, I really appreciate this, what you put on just now. I really had a great time. I come from education, and I've worked in an alternative school before. So I know this is something that's amazing that is really needed. And I just want to shake your hand and tell you that I appreciate it." And he said, "Yeah," he said, "but I'm gonna tell you now, a lot of these guys don't care. A lot of these guys don't, they don't care. It's just another day here for them. But just try to keep that humility that you have."
So the one or two that do care and could actually, benefit from it are just kind of forgotten.
Yeah, it's kind of because it's got to flow all the way down, right? He's at the top, but he's got people underneath of him that are directly intertwining with our minds every day, and they have to say so on what they're telling us on how the law works and who you stop and things of that sort.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So how do they determine where you go? Because you're obviously not training to go up in the white neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Philly, it's like, is the precinct, the location of the academy, does that matter at all? Or is it like everyone goes through one academy and then you get dispersed to different places? How do they determine where people go and what neighborhood you'll be in?
Yeah. So you have like a rotating system. So like the class before us, they all went to, let's say, South Philly and Southwest Philadelphia, because they haven't had an influx of officers there. So then the next class, which was us, we all went to North Philadelphia. The class after us, they all went to West Philadelphia. So essentially, they just try to rotate it to get each district enough people there. So then you go to your respective districts to walk the footbeat. Then after that, they try to get you like one district removed from where you live at. So that's another thing they started in Philadelphia, was that you had to live inside of the city limits of Philadelphia. So they're trying to, like, again, with the system, they're trying to push you in there, right, to get you to interact with your neighbor and get you familiar with those people. But it's things they do that they get around that too. Yeah. So you go to your district, you walk the footbeat. After you get out of the footbeat, they put you one removed from whatever district that you live in. So if you live in like the 24th, you'll be in like the 22nd, something like that. So you're not too far away. And then after that, you serve a year there. Then you can request whatever district that you want to go to after that.
All right, now you told me this on the phone. So what did they tell you about Philly? Like, they was like, all right, here we go. Like, what? Like, so they they got you hype. I mean, you're ready to go to war, so to speak. Maybe not you, because you come from a background and being black, you seem to be a little bit more sensitive to the plight in the way. But like, how did they? What was the phrase you said they said to you about like Philly? Like,
they said Philadelphia, you're getting ready to see the best show on earth. As soon as you hit the street, you're going to see the best show on earth. And I don't want to say that I wasn't at times caught up in it too, right?
Sure,
like when you're going through the academy, like you find yourself like, oh man, he should have, he wrestled him to the ground. He should have grabbed his leg maybe or something like that. You find yourself getting caught up in it also, right? Because you let's be honest, you can't be Malcolm X in there. Right. If you're coming in there like thinking you're like a Nat Turner, they're gonna get you out of there real quick.
Right.
So you gotta bite your tongue heavy also on things that you might know it's wrong. Just gotta keep your mouth shut if you want to stay. If you want to stay in there, if you want to stay with the groove. And yeah, my first day on the street, we went to a call and this lady walked out of a 3rd floor window. High on PCP, thought she was going down the steps, walked out the window.
Oh my goodness.
And I couldn't believe it. I mean, looking up, it's like way up there, the window's broken. They're like, yo, one guy's like, he's like, yo, I just seen her flying out the window. I didn't know what was going on. And she didn't break a bone. And that's what I knew. I said, yeah, this is the best show on earth right here.
Yo, she didn't break a bone though?
Hey, bro, PCP, that showing is, what's that show? What's that show? Not Heroes, The Boys or something, that superhero show. Where they inject them with that stuff. What's it called? That gives them superpowers. That's what PCP is, yo. Yeah. That joint will have you.
That's
often like. All right, so
now I was going. So this is the first job we go to, right? We're fresh out of the academy. We get to the academy. We meet the sergeant. You're out for the first 2 weeks. You're riding with a veteran. So in the academy, right, you have that legal officer that's teaching you like all these things. Wear your seatbelt. Anytime you stop, make sure you get on the radio. Don't search nobody. Don't search anyone unless you have probable cause to do so. He's teaching you all these things, right, to do. And I don't know if this is where you're going, Kurt. Soon as you hit the street, they're like, yo, forget about all that stuff. Don't get me killed out here with all that legal stuff. It's time to rock and roll. Let's go. It's time to rock and roll. So we, that first job, we got in the car. She turned on the radio and said, we got a woman that fell out of the window. So she turned on the radio. She turned on the radio up loud. I put my seatbelt on. She looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, man, you don't take that seatbelt off. She pulled over. We're supposed to stop for stop sign. She riding straight through the stop sign. Boom! I'm like, whoa! This is crazy. Goes straight through lights. One guy almost almost got hit. She slowed down. Like, yo, man, get you out the street, man.
Right.
She flying through the streets. We get there. We see the lady. I'm mesmerized about that happening.
It sounded like you was riding with Queen Latifah from Set It Off.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Cleo. He was riding with Cleo.
And then we get there, and the lady, she's clutching her pocketbook while she's on the ground. And the medics are trying to work with her. And the sergeant is like, hey, do you have drugs in your pocketbook? Why are you clutching your pocketbook like that? And she's like, I don't have no drugs in my pocketbook. What are you talking about? So the other lady that I was with, she's like, man, give me your pocketbook. And I'm thinking back to the legal. Yo, you got to have probable cause. You can't be looking at people's stuff. Man, she snatched that pocketbook so fast, grabbed the stuff, took the PCP out of her pocketbook, threw it back at her, walked away, threw it down the gutter. We got in the car. They pulled off.
Wow.
Just couldn't believe it. I said, man, this is amazing.
So there's some questions I want to ask you, but I want to hear, like, what is some of the crazy things? So that's day one. What's some of the stuff that you saw that was like, man, I can't unsee this. Like, this is just insane. Like, because it's, the greatest show on earth or whatever. Like, what is some stuff? How long did you serve on Philly PD?
I was in Philadelphia for 3 years.
Okay.
3 years. Yep. I served in Philadelphia in the Kensington area for 3 years.
Okay. Kensington. So for people who don't know, what's Kensington like in Philadelphia?
So Kensington is called the Badlands, BAD lands. And they're known for, as I said earlier, for having this heroin. Where they get it from, only God knows. But they have these train tracks in Kensington. And so people will leave their families and go live under these train tracks. And in the morning, they would come out. They would have these testers. They would give them people. The drug dealers would pay these young guys to give them testers. They would get testers. And all day long, they're high. So they're like zombies walking around, everywhere. inside of the Kensington area.
Wow.
And that's all you see throughout the day. Yeah. So
what's some of the stuff that you saw that you were like, this is crazy?
Man, so one of the saddest things I've seen was my daughter was 3 years old, and trigger warning for anybody that doesn't want to hear this, is something happened to a kid. My daughter was 3 years old at the time, and we get called to this house to relieve officers that are getting off. So these officers are getting off. Our shift is coming on. It's around 2:00, and we get there, and the house is sealed off, and people are in the house, and they said, what my partner was asking, well, what's going on? And our sergeant said, well, one person has to stay here. You don't need to stay here. You can go back out, because we didn't have a lot of officers on the street. So he was going back out by himself to answer calls. And she said, you can stay here and, cover the house. So I'm standing there covering the house. And the officer that was there said, hey, there's a gun right there. That's the gun that was used. And so I said, okay, no problem. So I'm standing there. I see the gun. I go back to the door. And my sergeant came back and she said, hey, when the chief gets here, make sure you show him the body, show him where escort him up to show him where the body is. I'm like, body? What are you talking about? This is like 3 hours after it happened. And she said, oh yeah, the body's upstairs. So she said, I'll be right back. So I go upstairs and I could hear bubble guppies on the TV. And so what happened was the stepfather was cleaning his gun, and the gun went off and hit the girl on the back of the head while she was watching bubble guppies. And that's not even the worst part. Wow. The worst part of the story was the guy took the body to the back room and told the family to blame the little one, that the little one was playing with the gun. Told him to tell the little 4-year-old that he was playing. He just told him to say, yo, you were playing with the gun. It happened to go off. So the whole family, the mom, the kids stuck with this story until forensics came and said, nah, that's not what happened, based on the trajectory of the bullet, things of that sort.
So they made that little boy go through that torture of he did it.
Yeah.
Oh my
amazing.
Goodness.
So and this kind of gets us into what you guys want to talk about, right?
Right.
So after that, they get there, and I remember going up there, and I hadn't prayed in a while, and I seen her body, and I seen a hole in her head, and I said, man, she had these, fresh braids done, and barrettes in her hair, and I said a little prayer, and then went back downstairs, and they come, they process everything, take the body out, take the gun out, and then my partner came to get me, and they came over the radio that they haven't found a stepdad yet. So now I just seen this little girl get popped. Right. I'm like, yo, we need to go make this arrest. Right. So we're like riding around looking at everybody.
Yeah, you amped up.
Cars on the street corners, like, yo, we gotta find this dude. And I'm glad I didn't find him, because my mind was somewhere else at that point. I knew it was. And later on, we never found him. But later on, we seen him inside the holding cell. And he had a hood over his head, had his hands behind his back. And they said, well, where'd you go? And he said he went to his mom's house to give his mom one last kiss, because he knows he's never going to see her again. He knows this is it, this is it for him. And serving life.
So this, like, to me, when I'm hearing all of this, I feel like, wow, you're psychologically prepared for, like, trauma when you're in the academy. Mm-hmm. So you kind of brace yourself, but then you get out there, and in the real life of it just reinforces what was said, but it also is attack. Like, I mean, even unless you really come from that, you don't just every day see a young girl with her head blown out, right?
No.
So you're expected to see some of the most evil things and still go do your job, right?
Trauma.
And that's the thing, right? That's the thing.
Crazy.
You get the trauma of it. Your next call, you're going to somebody's house to try to solve their situation.
Right.
You're trying to break up this domestic dispute where she don't want to listen. He don't want to leave the house. Nobody wants to listen to you. Your mind is back at the other house. Right. You're still thinking about the girl that got killed, and if they found the dude that did it. So you're dealing with that trauma while you're trying to solve other people's problems. And you go home, next morning you're right back at it. Everybody's right back in roll call. nobody's saying, "Hey, is everybody all right? Anybody need to go see the doctor?" Or
That's what I was just about to say. You know, it's almost like, and this is what we don't know because we're not there. It's, you know, it's, as I'm hearing you talk, Rashod, it's almost like we think the police aren't human. They think the people aren't human, and you relate to each other that way. Like, I'm not, you know, it wasn't until recently where you realize, like, hey, man, like the rise of sort of trauma culture is like, hey, so not that it justifies this, but I can see why officers are like, I feared for my life and just shot, because you're living moment to moment trauma and you're carrying with you, like you're in the military, I might lose my life. And that didn't start from your experience. It started from the academy.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're all, so that on edge is only, it's just like Kira just asked this question. How do you not go insane in that job without Jesus?
Right, right.
So one thing to bounce off of that, right? In the academy, like I said, I was the oldest person there, and I think it was might have been 3 of us in the academy that were married, and I was the only one that had children. So what they told us, Philadelphia police has a 70, I think it was like 76% divorce rate.
Wow,
76%. of the people that get married here are going to get divorced. 85% divorce rate on your second marriage, because you're probably going to marry another cop. And it's all because of the story I just explained. You got to deal with that. Then you got to go home and see if your kid want to, you know, clean up the bathroom or make their bed up. Right. But your mind is somewhere else.
And then I think, considering human psychology and the way that we work through things, I would have to imagine that even that, like, the shock and trauma of things probably only lasts for a certain season before you become desensitized and kind of cold, you know, and that's the kind of person that does not care to relate to others' feelings and others, you know, lives and what they've been through. So
exactly. When you your first time, like, dealing with a dead body, because in Philadelphia you have to transport the dead body. Right? They don't always, most of the dead bodies are from overdose, or somebody got shot, and you got to get them up and get them into the bag. If they're not going to process it, it's so many people getting killed that they don't have the manpower to send the coroners out every day. So you have to, essentially, they call it riding a wagon. And that's another thing that goes back to, like, activity, right? Nobody wants to carry dead bodies, but they'll put you on a wagon if your activity isn't up. And you got to go, you know, get the body, get the body inside of the bag, zip it up, get it inside the wagon.
And, like, punishment, like the worst punishment.
That's terrible.
Like, you got to go get dead bodies and still got to eat dinner and deal with that. Like, we're not created for that. Like, we're not created to just see, like, somebody dead. And then you think about when you talk about not even being from that kind of community, you don't know nothing like that. You know, like, you talk about PTSD. It's like, and it doesn't sound like, why isn't, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm going to ask this question. You said, no, that's not right. Why isn't there any division of the police department that's directly connected to the psychological sort of care for the police officers? I mean, I know that you go talk to somebody if you shoot somebody or something, but I'm talking about just as, hey, listen, you're a human being. This is tough. You're seeing a lot of violence. You're going to be affected. Yeah. It's almost like, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say there is, once you hit the street, right? So you're out of the academy, you have your uniform on, you hit the street, and you start seeing who's respected inside of that district. So you'll have your certain officers that, you know, you call if you get in a big arrest. You call if you're having trouble about something. The mentality that goes around it is, if you're going down, they call it, I think it's the EAP line. If you go down that line, then you shouldn't be an officer, because they'll take your gun. So essentially, they persuade you away from ever getting any kind of help for anything that you might be going through. Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow. So they know the divorce rate is high. They know, and it's, I mean, I'm going to just say this, and I could be wrong, but it's almost like they don't care about the police officers. They care about the action that the police officers do. They care about,
exactly.
for lack of a better term, because it's like, man, you don't want, stability of the family. Like, you don't even enforce stability of the family. So to go back to Jason Whitlock, who was saying that the Tyre Nichols situation happened because these men probably, he was saying they didn't have fathers. The police chief is a single mother. None of that was true. Half of them, I think most of those dudes had that, and the police chief is married with a kid. But he was just saying, like, this is about the breakdown of the family, right? From the conservatives, they're always trying to find ways to continue with their, political tropes. But on some level, he's right in the sense that the preservation of marriage is and the psychological well-being of the officers seem to mean less to them. Like, you could be employee of the month, but your marriage is a wreck. Your psychological profile is a wreck, and it's like, as long as you're doing your numbers.
As long as you're doing your numbers, you're all right.
That sounds like big business everywhere.
100%.
Yeah, it is.
But the difference is this big business, because I agree, but it's life and death. You talk about the product are people.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like business everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, and to kind of take a turn. I don't know if you're ready to go here yet or not. But
I think you're going where I want to go. I think you're going where I want to go.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on. So you have that, right? You have that element of the psychology, and to go a little bit back to the police academy. What the police academy does is they'll because you're a new officer, you just have questions about what it's going to be like on the street, right? What is it going to be like? Tell me some stories. What did you have to deal with? So they would continually tell you stories about different groups. And they would say, well, what group do you want to be in? What group do you want to be in? And so somebody would ask, well, what are the groups? What do they mean? So when you first get out of the academy, after you do your foot beat, you go to line squad. Line squad means you're in a vehicle, you have a partner, and you're just answering the radio, right? Domestic call, kid don't want to go to school, somebody high on drugs you're going to, things of that sort. Not real serious calls. Quote unquote. I mean, they're still dangerous, right? So you'll have what's called 5 squad. So you got the line squad, you have what's called 5 squad. So 5 squad is they don't answer the radio, or they for basic calls. All they do is they go to the serious calls. Current fight going on. Somebody got a gun. Somebody selling drugs on the corner. That's what they go there for within that district. And then you have, so they're still within like a confined space. So then after that, you have what's called highway patrol. The highway patrol, they are strictly for guns. Like, all they want are guns all day long. So they go around the whole city of Philadelphia, answer no calls, answer to no one, really, and they find guns from people. Then you have what's called strike force, and the strike force, citywide, they don't answer the calls. If they happen to be there, they might come there for a second, but that's what they do. They're in the whole city and they're for guns also.
Wow.
Oh, they're for drugs. They're for drugs.
Wow.
That's strike force.
That's strike force, yeah.
Right.
So this is a good segue to my next question. Mm-hmm. So what we heard with the Tyre Nichols situation was that these guys were part of a unit called Scorpion Unit. And it's an acronym. It's like Save Communities of, I forgot what it is. It's some I should have done I had a crazy day. So, but it's a, talk to me about how these units get formed, because I watched this doc. Well, it was a show called We Run the City, or We Own the City. It's about Baltimore and their gang task force, and it was basically like, eventually, like, it was these dudes who, it was a true story because it was a book and it became a show. The people who did The Wire on HBO did this show. It's on HBO as well, called We Own the City, and it's about this gang task force that was kind of brutal in Baltimore.
So I'm sorry.
They were corrupt and all of that. So I know in all these cities there are these specific units. So they're not SWAT, but maybe they're strike force, like strike what you were talking. But how do these? What bring us into sort of the perspective on these units and the kind of guys who go in them, and what's the real goal there from the police perspective?
So that's a great question, right? So these groups are formed. And this is just off my perception and my analytics of thinking about what's going on. These groups are formed because you have so much crime going on in the city that they have to break it down. They have to say where is the crime coming from, right? So they take this. They'll take a certain amount of officers and say, okay, your job is drugs, right? We have a huge drug house wherever in North Philadelphia on this block. We need you to go shut it down. So they'll go there, they'll stake it out, they'll send some people in there to buy. Person will come out, they'll grab the person with the drugs, grab 2 or 3 people, then eventually the dealer come out, they'll go grab the dealer. That's when they're on like stakeouts and things of that sort. But when they're not doing things of that sort, they're pulling over vehicles, trying to catch people with drugs inside of the vehicles. Same thing for what we call highway patrol. They were for guns. So they would have people tell on people. They would go to any call for a person, black male on the corner, white T-shirt, has a gun in his right waistband. Within 10 seconds, highway patrol is going to show up to go get them because that's their thing, is guns. Now, how do you get on these units? Great question. So you get on these units. Like I said, at the beginning, you're in line squad. You're just answering the radio. So they're basically just keeping you busy. So what you have to do is you have to say you go to a call, and the call was a quick call, nothing big was happening. You'll keep yourself on that call for a little bit, but you'll still be riding around, right? You might pull a car over, or you might hear that call that from the highway patrol saying, hey, a guy has a gun around the corner from where you're from. So then that officer will hightail it around there and try to get that gun arrest before highway can get it. So now if he gets enough gun arrests, now he can be considered to go into highway patrol or go into the 5 squad. So that's how you essentially move up to those elite levels.
So you're competing essentially with other officers to get there.
Yeah, you're competing. Right. And what I always tell people is, if you stop 100 people, sure, you're going to find, in places like Philadelphia, you're going to find some people with drugs. You probably find somebody with a gun. But out of the 3 arrests that you had, you got 97 other people that you just harassed that have nothing to do with what's going on in the drug game or in this gun culture. Nothing to do with it.
It just becomes,
and that's where that divide is.
So you're in this community. So would you say that, like, when you're in like one of these task force, right? You're. Oh, let me ask you this, because I know that you're supposed to be biased, right? The guy said, "Don't listen to that. Be biased. Don't trust no one." But you get a sense though when you're out there, right? Just like anything, you get a feel for like who's a criminal, who may be, and who's not, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I mean, I'm sure that there's some surprises, right? But it's not like you see a dude coming from Temple University, but he's really the biggest drug lord of the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's that undercover. Like in these, I'm from these, communities. In these communities, like it's a badge of honor to show that you gangster. Mm-hmm. So unless you really, really smart, you not gonna not appear like you about that life, right? Yeah. So you get used to seeing people that, and sometimes you're wrong. They might not be. They dressing the part. They live in the neighborhood. Not everybody's a killer, but you get a sense of, I know the vibes. I know how they talk, how they walk, how they look. You get a sense of that. When I was talking to you earlier on the phone, I said the biggest challenge for me, not the biggest, of the Tyre Nichols was, I think those officers knew what Memphis gangsters look like. Mm-hmm. And this dude was not that. Right. He was not a Memphis. You could tell, you could look at him and be like, oh, you could tell he ain't from that, right? So am I off? Like, do you get a sense of like, all right, this person's probably not about that? Like, do officers have that, or is it just, man, everybody's a suspect, and we treating everybody on the same level? I don't care where you from.
Yeah, man. Essentially, the units. That's how the units are, man. They're pulling everybody out the car. It doesn't matter if they have probable cause or not. Everybody get out the car, and they everything down to their presence, right? So as a police officer, you would have your uniform, you have your blue, your blue shirt, your regular pants, things of that sort. Yeah. But when you get in that unit, like a unit like Highway, they have these tight leather jackets, and they put the shoe shine, on the jackets, and they have these high black boots that they need to keep shined up all the time. and their uniforms need to be tight all the time. And truth be told, the community knows that. So when if they're having a problem with a certain apartment building or something like that, they'll call those guys out to handle it. And everybody will, but the thing is, it's like everybody will turn their back to it. Like, yo, y'all go handle it. Whatever happens. We got y'all back. Do y'all thing. To go and quell whatever that block is going through. It's been shootings on that block. Whatever's happening, they'll just send all highway down there for a week. We need that shut down. And sure enough, they'll get down there and they'll do whatever they do. But then you see how aggressive they are with everybody. I mean, just pulling people out, not even opening up the door, pulling them right out the window. I'm like, man, that's crazy. But that's their reputation of what they do when they come around.
Right.
Two things stood out to me when I watched the video. Of course, the fact that they were black, it was all black men involved, but then also how like calm they were afterwards and talking about it. Like I remember talking about fights like that when I was young with my boys. Like, yo, you saw how I picked my man up and you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's how they was having the conversation. It was almost as if though they weren't at work. Like they were kind of hanging out. It was their hangout, and but there was the idea that they were at work because they were all in uniform. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But like,
right.
Where did the conscience go? Like where did we just beat a man to death pretty much? Like, I mean, what happened there? That's the question. Like why is the conscience so seared that these men can talk like that? As if this person wasn't a person.
Yeah, I think officers like that, they get caught up in a moment. It's such a that might be some bad, but they get caught up in a moment.
Obviously.
Of doing things, and it's like I'll explain it like this. In the academy, you're shooting so much. I mean, you go through when you start at the gun range. You're shooting like every day, all day. Bang, 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 bang. And you're getting better and better. Do this. Easy on the trigger. Get on your scope. So it's becoming like a repetitive, pulling your gun out. And it's sort of like they're just preparing you, and you're like practicing, and then you're like ready to get in the game.
Right.
You're like, you know what I mean? You're like ready to get in the game. And to see something go to that level, unfortunately, man, things like that have to happen in order for groups like that to be put on a front page, on a front TV to say, this is what people in these communities are dealing with right here. This is it.
So the programming, you would say, has gone so far that these guys don't even realize how far they're going in the moment, because the programming is there so embedded that in the moment they can't even, there's no stop button.
And they're doing these things obviously, right, because they got 4 people there, right? One on one. I mean, come on.
It's a different scenario.
It's a totally different scenario. And I've seen officers in those positions, right? I've had some old head officers that would tell other officers, yo, you're only doing that because we're all right here. Why don't you come back when we all get off? Go back down there and fight him one-on-one. I'll make sure you don't get banged. And they won't do it, right? There's no way they're gonna go back down there,
right?
So,
safety in numbers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask this, because here's the other layer that I think was exposed with the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't think many people knew that there was like a police bill of rights and a law officer's constitution, and it wasn't until a lot of these, I'm calling them murders. Maybe not every one. I think there were some situations where, if I was the officer, I would have shot and killed that person too. But there were enough situations where it was like, man, you're reacting to now what I would say is the training and the psychological preparation, right? Psychological. But I wonder how much of the activity and the willingness to do it is connected to them knowing there's not going to be much consequences for it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't until all this stuff over the last, after Mike Brown and, because Trayvon Martin he started the conversation, but it was Mike Brown that really, whether you believe hands up, people got caught up on whether he really had his hands up and said don't shoot. That wasn't the real issue for many black people. That was a slogan. We choose slogans to represent our pain, right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter if it was hands up, don't shoot. What it was a mosaic of law enforcement and a lack of accountability for overreach. Most black people, I'm from that street. We know, like, sometimes they got shoot. It's wild dudes out here. Like, we get it.
Yeah.
The problem is when you shoot and kill a Tamir Rice, you go to prison, fam.
Yeah.
When you choke the dude out and he's saying, I can't breathe. Like, at what point is he faking? Like, let him
Fernando
breathe.
Castillo.
You have the guy told you, officer, I have a firearm.
I have a firearm.
It's and he was talking in the language of a gun holder, right?
And calm, not even nervous or scared or nothing. Like,
no, he was like, I just want to let you know. And then he goes, and he shoots right in front of his dog. Like, there's this sense where a part of me, after hearing all this, and you realize, when police are charged, they not only get this is what I was told, and you tell me this is true. When you're charged, they'll remove you, they'll put you on like paid leave essentially, because now there's under investigation. You get, as the officer, before you make your statement, you get all of what the witness said happens. You get their statement before you even have to make yours. You almost get an advantage and get to shape your narrative because you know what's being said. Where in a regular court of law, I don't know what's going on until discovery. Way later when you find out this is the evidence they got against you. And your lawyer has to get that. But the officers get it off the break. Like, they get it right away. Here's what was said. You give your statement later. And then the people who decide your fate are often retired police officers or people who relate to the officers. And so you get these charges dropped, acquittal. And so, and tell me where this is wrong. This is what I've researched and thought this was pretty consistent. But I feel like, because if I'm an officer, right, and let's just add the Bible to this for a second. I'm a sinner, right? I am a police. Some people treat police as if they are above sinning in these ways. Like, no, they're young people who are power tripping sometimes. They're given an authority. I mean, it must be a power trip to be in a cop car, pull up, and you see people get nervous,
Yeah, it is.
People get out your way, and you're like, yeah, get out the way. Like, you power tripping. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. We can do that when we're not a police. But you get all these things, but you also know if I go overboard, there's not going to be any consequences. And I would say that if there were consequences, the riots in Watts wouldn't have happened after Rodney King. Black Lives Matter, I don't think would have existed if, hey, when you kill someone and you shouldn't have, it was not necessary, you go to prison.
Right.
But there's all these exemptions for police, and it's like, fam, if I shoot somebody, I go to prison.
Yeah,
y'all got from the get-go. Y'all got so there was corruption, and then you got the police, the blue law. Police don't tell on each other, even if you overstep. So you got the same stop snitching that the streets got.
Yeah,
you use the same logic, and I think it is worse because your law, like we're paying you to protect us. You should be like, you can't do that, but you won't tell on your partner because how it will appear. People will chastise you, and eventually you'll be tagged as a snitch. And yet, it's the same law on the streets.
You also have to consider how the lines have been blurred too, from right and wrong. You know, like what you got the educational officer coming in saying this is how things are done, and then the street officer coming in saying forget all of that.
Right.
What's right? What's wrong? What line do I choose, and where do I walk on?
And so there's no consequence. So if I'm a police officer, right, and you got PTSD, man, you dealing with the worst of the worst every day. You're numb to it now. You're not seeing people as human beings. Maybe your family you see as a human being, but you're just numb to it. And then there are no consequences. Such and such killed a person. He was on off. He was getting paid leave for 3 months, And then he comes back in and everybody's like, hey, there he is. That's our dude. And he's back.
Yeah.
Like, how much is the lack of consequences contribute to? Because training all that, I mean, you just told us, if other precincts are doing what you experience, it makes total sense to me why this is happening.
So it was a buildup of, I think, the lack of consequences. And it goes back to what you guys recognized earlier, right? When you said, when I think you said, Strack, you said the system is put in place for you to do the right thing, for you to have good officers out there, right? So I'll give you an example. When we started on a foot beat, you would stop people every now and then. Say someone was urinating in an alleyway or something like that, right? You stop them. Hey, man, you can't be doing that. You know, you have to get their ID, you run their name, things of that sort. Nothing going on, whatever, right? If you want to be an aggressive officer, hey, what do you have in your pocket? You know, can I check? Can I look and make sure it's not a weapon? Right? Sure, go ahead, check it. So you might, you know, you check his pocket or whatever. Another person might be standing on the corner. There's a call about a guy on the corner. Officer gets there on a foot beat, sees he has a cell phone on the side, says, "Oh, I thought it was a gun." You know, he searches them. Every time you stop somebody, you have to put the paperwork in. So what Philadelphia did is they said, "Look, our citizens are having their rights violated. So how about we start sending lawyers in to look at the paperwork for every person that gets stopped?" Great. I mean, I think it's a great idea, right? To look at it, make sure everything is remaining fair. So what will happen is, if you go back to those examples I just gave, let's say you'll have an officer that'll say, you know, stopped a male on 2700 B Street, seen a bulge in his right pocket. I thought it was a gun. I checked. It would happen to be a cell phone. He might say that 10 times. Somebody will eventually pull him aside and say, "Hey, you wrote this down 10 times. You've been flagged. You got to start saying it's in the left pocket. You thought it was candy in the back pocket. You got to start saying something else. You can't keep saying that, or else you're going to get in trouble." So it goes back to what you're saying, Kurt, about it's a buildup of consequences. I guarantee if you look at these officers' past, you'll see a buildup of paperwork of people complaining and people saying what they've done to them, and there was no consequence. I bet 100 to nothing that is the case. That if you talk to people that they've interacted with, it was probably not as worse, but it was probably some of the same attitudes that they've been dealing with. They've been getting away with it, and now they're going to get hit.
And this is the bigger picture issue. This is where, for many black people, where it connects back to slavery. Why that? Because chattel slavery and then Jim Crow with a law legally, they were basically evil done, like image bearer violations, right? Evil done to you without consequences. But if you do something, the extreme consequences, right?
Yeah.
So I can rape your wife if I own you, and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you talk back, then there's consequences for you. So you develop in the American psyche, and it doesn't. And we don't even got to reduce it to just like black and white and race. You look at just rich people, not many consequences. Poor people, consequences. Right? Yeah. We see things differently. Like a dude, Hugh Hefner is like an 80-year-old dude who's having sex with women who are like his great-great-granddaughter's age. No one cares because he's rich. Right? Diddy, this dude is dating girls that are 3-4 years older than his son. No consequences. Like we don't care because he has money. Yeah. I mean, even the way you divide crimes up, I get that there has to be some division. The white collar crimes. Hey man, them white collar crimes be ruining people's lives.
Yeah.
Like in a city, even if you in Kensington, right, and you kill somebody, that's definitely violent and that's real, and that's going to affect those families and that. But man, some of these white collar crime dudes be swindling people out of 401ks, pensions. When Enron happened, they said hundreds of thousands of people lost everything. People were committing suicide because they had nothing left. But yet they're just treated with like this sense of like, hey, it's not that. So again, we have a history of consequences for some, for thee, not for me. And that's what, even though I hated Black Lives Matter, as an organization, even though I hated them, because I felt like they took the slogan that was real for many black people, the sentiment, and selfishly made them the face of a sentiment that preceded them, but also didn't care about their philosophical framework of Marxism and all this other stuff, right? Yeah. So I hated the organization, but I understood the sentiment of the hashtag. What many people didn't get and still don't get because they just call you woke is that it's the sentiment is because there are no consequences. So what about black on black crime? Great point. If I commit a crime, I go to prison. That's why the prison population is largely black people, because we go to prison when we commit these crimes. The problem is when law enforcement does, there often is no consequences. So when the Tyre Nichols thing happened, Jason Whitlock, a black conservative who Ice Cube would say, black police showing out for the white cop. That's just his dude's MO, right?
Yeah.
He was like, look, the people they were fired, charged, and what's the problem? What are people protesting? Because there's a pattern of them not being convicted.
Yeah.
Black people aren't stupid. We have a legacy of you charge them, but then in 5 months you find out they're acquitted. No one cares about. We want people to go to prison the way, and that's what I feel like. We keep talking about training, and I think there's what you're describing is like, oh my gosh. But I think it's training. I think it's psychological. I think to make cops feel like, oh man, they're gonna take your badge if you're dealing with. Man, these people, you don't care. These police are human beings, man. You don't care. Like you had a family that kept you sane. You had a little girl. I can't imagine how you felt the day you saw that little girl. And the reason I'm saying is because you said my daughter was 3 years old. You remember that.
Yeah.
You equated that little girl to your daughter. I can't imagine what it was like for you. And I know your kids. You got beautiful children. I can't imagine you coming home and looking at your daughter and not being affected.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough, man. It was rough.
Crazy.
And you talk about that process, the process of going down to, because every officer is eventually going to have to go down to internal affairs. It's something I don't know an officer that hasn't been to internal affairs. Even Mr. Friendly, has been down to internal affairs for something.
Right.
Because you go down to internal affairs, if you were just going to the call, you never made it there, and somebody's rights got violated, they'll go back and listen to the radio and say, "Hey, look, you're Unit 301, right? Yeah, you said you were gone. All right, you need to have a meeting in internal affairs next week or in 2 weeks, right? So, but when you get to internal affairs, you got the best lawyer in the city. You got the top lawyer that's going to tell you, look, you ain't saying nothing. Don't say nothing. This is what you're going to say right here. Boom, 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 and we're out of here. So, you're right. I mean, and people recognize that. People, you can only throw the wool over people's eyes for but so long, man. Right. Firing somebody and charging them, we all know that means absolutely nothing. Right? If he gets found not guilty, they get the back pay, the vacation back.
100.
And
sometimes their job back, or they can go work for another precinct.
I mean, that feeds into how calm they were in the aftermath of everything on video, because they didn't have the fear of losing their jobs or going to jail. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So not only did they not care that this person was a person, but now they don't fear anything. So it's just another day at work for them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shame, man. It's a shame. But like I said before, I think if you could take any good out of that situation, I think the good would be there needs to be a hard look taken at these units that have been put together, I think, for a good purpose, right? Yeah. Because like you said earlier, there are some tough dudes in our neighborhood that's not going to listen. They don't. Officer Friendly is not going to get that joker off the corner. It ain't going to happen, right? You need somebody that's going to be tough and stand up to him to go there. But the problem is, what about the other people that they're dealing with? 100%. What about Nichols? What about these other people that they're pulling up on and dealing with? Now you have a problem, right? Now you have a problem, man. And I don't know if you ever watched The Wire before, but it's just like that.
When
they had what's it called? Comstat? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Go to where they would talk about the numbers and the different bodies. It's the same thing. When them bodies start dropping, you'll see highway patrols start going into that neighborhood. When drugs pick up in this neighborhood, you'll see strike force start riding around over there, and everybody will know. Though, even the people in the community will know. Yo, Coleman strike force out here, man. I'm out of here.
Right. No, that's real. And I'm for that as a. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say another crazy thing. I know I told y'all the sad story, but another thing. Me and my partner worked overtime one time. This is when I knew Philadelphia was just different. And my partner worked overtime one night, and we're riding around, and I see a guy that I had locked up about a week ago, and he admit, sure enough, it looked like he had made a drug sale. So we see him on him, check him, he had nothing on him, and he says, "Man, Coleman, what you doing? I thought you got off an hour ago. What, you working overtime?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You usually riding up Sunset Avenue around 4:15." I said, "Yo, how does dude know my schedule, man?" But that's police work, man. They have all day to pay attention to you and to know who you are, where you live at, what your schedule is, and they are on it like you wouldn't believe. And it freaked me, man. The hair on my neck stood up. I'm like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" He said, "Man, you usually ride up this way to your house." I said, "Man, that's crazy."
No, that is crazy, bro.
Yeah.
So let me from your perspective, how do police officers, and again, this is a broad, you can't, but I just want to get, how do police officers view a Tyre Nichols video like that? How, what's the real sentiment? Like, are officers like, "Oh man, that's terrible, man, this guy," because you get this impression. No, many officers are like, "This is terrible," and condemn it. But I know some officers was like, "Hey man, it just is. That's just a job."
Yeah.
Like, how do you think people view it?
It's essentially like black and white issues, right? When we're around black people, your view on it might be a little stronger than when you're around like a diverse group of people where you could kind of, brush off of it. But I feel like a lot of people, man, are starting to wake up. A lot of officers are starting to wake up and just realize that some things are wrong. Some things are bad, and we have to stop defending. Officers have to stop defending things that go on like this, because it's things like that are sad, man. Yeah, it's sad. It's sad. So.
And so, last question for me, man. Like, what do you feel? I mean, we've said a lot, so it might be we've already answered this question, but I want to kind of close with this. What do you feel like we need to know about police officers and how to process? Not dudes that did that, right? Those dudes will be judged accordingly. Because what I was going to say earlier was like, I'm for police doing some head busting when it's evil, because as a believer, Romans 13 is in the Bible.
That's why they yield the sword. Yeah.
You yield the sword. The governing authorities are appointed by God. So I ain't with abolish the police and some of the stuff that some people are saying. I think people think defund the police means abolish the police. Those are two different things. Mm-hmm. Most cities make budgets. I know cities at like LA, 60% of LA's budget is police.
Yeah.
We just did an episode on that.
We just did that. Remember
crazy.
that refund the police is what we called the episode, like 3 episodes ago. This is crazy, right? So, I'm as a believer, I ain't no way abolish the police. Nothing. They're the governing authority that God has established to bear the sword, and But I feel like, that I get. But what do you think we should take away about just police? Not them type of dudes, but just in general. Like, how should we think, like, to help us? Because I think we can also be caught up in all police are like them on some level, right? And that's not true. But and the reason why is because when you talk about, there's only a few bad apples. Hey, come on, fam. Like, there's a few bad apples, but one bad apple could affect a lot of people's lives. There was an officer in Virginia, Fairfax, Virginia, that had been eventually charged with planting false evidence and stuff on 400 different people over a 10-year period. And when they caught it, they had
a jail-free card.
They had to open up and one of them was a DC firefighter who was serving time for something he didn't do. And so I was like, okay, let's just say you agree with a few bad apples. Well, that one bad apple messed up 400 people's lives, and then you think all the families of those 400 people's, that now you're into potentially 1,500 people that have been affected by this one bad apple who was planting evidence. And it was wild is, after he got charged, he went down to Florida, and he got a job with law enforcement in Florida. It was the FBI that contacted. I mean, I got the article. I got to say that we talked about it maybe it's like 2 years ago. They had to contact him and say, "What are you doing? You can't hire this dude. This dude's on an investigation." Yeah. And they were like, "Oh, we didn't know." They knew, but they tried to say we didn't know. But it was crazy. So it's like that. Even if you think there's a few bad apples, that one messed up probably 2,000 people's lives and all of that. And so so let's just say there's tens of thousands of law enforcement in the country. Yeah. If there's 1,000 bad apples, they can affect millions of people's lives. Yeah. So miss me with the bad apples reality. Right. But having said that, though, like there's some stuff that like I feel like we don't always understand and take into consideration. So what would you say in closing? Because we talked a lot about how the police can be, how they're trained, but what should we be thinking about as people who are processing? Not again the Tyre Nichols type of police, but just police officers in general. Like, what would be your word?
Yeah, I think taking into consideration that you are dealing with a population that might not come from where you come from, right? So, if that entails you having to give up something, meaning you turn your light on, right, when that officer is approaching you in a vehicle, right? It just calms everybody down because now he has you stopped, so he can't say, I'm scared to go over there. I'm not going over there, right? He's got to go over there at this point.
That's a good point. Turn your light on. That's good.
Yeah, turn your light on.
Especially if it's nighttime, obviously.
Yeah, if you have tinted windows in the back, roll the window down. Just give a little bit to the officer because he's going through a lot too, right? You don't know the call that he just got done with. You don't know if he's just recently divorced. You don't know what he had to deal with at home. So you can play a part in having this interaction, right? Be a good interaction. And truth be told, there are some amazing police officers that do great things. I'll give you a quick story before I roll. There was this guy worked overtime one time, and my partner bailed on me last minute, said he had something to do, so he didn't work overtime. So I had to work with this other officer. So the officer's in the van, and he's reading. And I'm a reader too. So I asked him, "What are you reading, man?" He said, "I'm reading this book on Mark Furman." And I'm thinking in my head, like, is he talking about the guy from the OJ case? And I said, which Furman is it? He said, "Yeah, Mark Furman OJ case." And I said, "Man, it's going to be a long ride," right? I'm thinking that's the Furman that called the dude the N-word. He said, "You got to beat black people to death, right, in order to get confessions out of them."
He was one of the Rodney King officers too.
Was he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was one of the Rodney King officers.
No way. Furman was one of the cops that was beating up Rodney King?
Google is your friend. If I'm wrong, I'll read it. But I believe Mark Furman was that's how the case turned into racist cop. Because he was one of them, and then they traced it with him saying this stuff, and it became about Mark Furman than who killed Nicole.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty positive I'm not. But anyway, go ahead.
So I get in the van with something already thinking in my head, oh man, this guy is, he probably has the same mentality as a Furman, right? This is going to be a long 8-hour shift. So we drive, we stop at a 7-Eleven, get back in the vehicle. This day you had to have activities. So we went somewhere where someone was inside of an alleyway. I think we stopped somebody coming out of the alleyway, talked to him. Well, he's talking to the guy. He's talking to a white guy. And he's talking to the white guy about giving him his ID. He gives the ID, hands the ID to me. I run the ID on a computer, but I can hear him talking to the guy. And he says, "Yo, how long you been on drugs?" And the guy's telling him the story, and I give him the ID back, and he gives the guy the ID back, and he says, "Well, look, here's this number right here. If you ever want to get help, go get help." So then we leave there. We go to this house, random house, black lady in the house. She's drinking, had a couple of drinks, and he says, "Where are your kids at?" And she says, "My kids upstairs. The cops came here the other night and they beat him up," and she's telling him this whole story about what happened. And he's like, "Okay, here's the number to internal affairs. Ask for this person. Is everything else okay?" And then she said, "Yeah, thank you for taking Thomas out yesterday." So Thomas was this 6'5" black kid that was mentally disabled. And so he goes over there every 2 weeks to take the kid in the middle of the hood without his uniform to the barbershop to get his hair cut. And throughout the night, he would have these interactions with everybody we would stop and talk to. And he would talk to them, give them advice, give them phone numbers, wouldn't violate anybody's rights. And it was like one of the best nights I've had as an officer working in Philadelphia. And this dude was amazing talking to people. You know, I mean, yo, you've been drug dealing you've been out here all day selling drugs. You're not done yet? Come on, man. You got to get out of here. Guy
and he learned all that from Mark Furman.
Yeah, yeah, right. But
he learned what not to do.
Right. Yeah, I said, well, why do you read these books? And he said, I read these books just because I like books, man. I like to hear from controversial people, right? So I thought that was amazing, and I wanted to tell that story because I know sometimes I can even have as a former officer, I can even have a bad taste in my mouth about officers at times, right? So always like to throw that in there too.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I think could change is I'm big on politics, right? Elected officials, mayors, governors, senators, things of that sort. You can always set an appointment with the police chief or the police in your community to be able to go in and talk to them about what can you do to help that community, right? And you can vote in people that elect these chiefs to be police chiefs that are going to do some of the things that you want them to do. Like you made a great point earlier, when an officer in Philadelphia gets in trouble for violating someone from Philadelphia, the people on the jury are from like suburban Pennsylvania. They're coming down. They don't have the same experience in the hood that this person has. So they love the cops, right? They're always going to get them off. So things like that have to change, right? There has to be some representation from people that are dealing with these police officers, you know, on a daily basis.
That's a good point.
But that's what, hey, Rashod, man, whew, this was so good, bro. I
appreciate y'all.
I really enjoyed this, man. This is one of them. I'm going to go back and listen to this again because I want the real. You know what I'm saying? Like at cross examine, man. We truth seekers,
right?
Yeah. We not on nobody's side, but our side is vertical, man. We just trying the Lord. So we just about truth, and if this is truth, it's truth. You know, I'm not going. Mm-hmm. I don't want nobody defending nobody. Let's just deal with truth. So
yeah,
I appreciate it, man. You said a lot of things that I think. And I imagine, and again, I don't know how widely different training academies are, but just from the stuff I've read, studied, heard from other people, I have friends who have friends of cops and it sounds pretty consistent.
Right.
That the kind of training that you're receiving is not unique to where you got trained, but it's sort of, you know, what they call it, part and parcel, whatever. It seems to be more normalized to kind of prepare officers to approach the community like that, and then also to shame them for actually being human beings and struggling with seeing dead bodies and wanting to show compassion. I think, and then you add the accountability piece, like, hey, there are consequences. Look, if you could cross the line, you're going to go in there with the perps that you arrested. And they're going to be waiting for you to come in there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
They're going to be waiting. Like, that should be like, hey, let me be on my game. A lot of that stuff, man, I just think is just missing. And then there's other levels of the historical perspective on black people, or poor people, really. It's not even just black, but just people who don't have economic means are usually in our society the least valued and the people that people don't care about.
Yeah,
because they'll do documentaries on some white girls from rich homes that go missing, you know. So they'll do all that stuff, but you can't get this community in Flint, Michigan, no water for a long time, right? There's all this type of stuff that you just realize, like, wow. But tonight was very helpful, and I hope our cross examiners really okay, yeah, there's some stuff that police are exposed to get trained to. This like challenging, but then there's also the psychological, like we kind of can treat police too like they're not human beings. Mm-hmm. Like you see evil all day and we expect you to be Mr. Rogers.
Yeah,
it's like,
not gonna happen.
Nah, fam. I mean, when I have a bad day, if I don't feel well, I can be harsh with my family. Mm-hmm. I just got sick. I got a stuffy nose, my sore throat, and I'm getting upset at you because you asking for something. Imagine you a cop, like you said. You don't know what. I think it's the thing that you said that I want to end with for people processing police. You made this statement, and I think this is what we should take away from when we're thinking about police in general, not the murderers who killed Tyre Nichols, but when you said you don't know what his last call was.
That's true.
We don't know that you just saw a woman badly beaten by a dude, and you had to subdue him in a way that got your adrenaline up. And no one says, "Hey, why don't you take the day off? Why don't you take some time, go chill why don't you chill out?" Nah, it's like, all right, after that, next call. And it's almost like you guys, like police are machines. Like you don't have feelings. You're not affected by this. And we can kind of think like, man, you're supposed to, it's like, nah, man, when you're on edge like that, you're trained to be on edge and then you're in it. And it's just like, wow, most people ain't never seen a dead body, bro.
Right.
This ain't Stand By Me. You don't see, you guys want to go see a dead body. Like most people will never see a dead body in their lives unless they're at a funeral of a loved one. Mm-hmm. It's a dead body's different in the street with blood coming out.
It is.
Than in a casket. In a casket, you're prepared for that. So, all right, two quick questions, Rashod, and we're gonna let you go because we know you. Sure. We appreciate your time. These are questions people are asking. Someone said, "What are Rashod's thoughts on arbiters on you?" I guess YT is YouTube. I'm not sure if you know what would that on auditors on YouTube.
Yeah, I think she's talking about when I think Jose's talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when people stand around and tape police interactions?
Yeah, it might be that. It could be that.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on people?
I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's great. I think accountability is good, right? I think it's you know, if you were to tape all the officers, there's not a crazy amount of officers doing the wrong thing. It ain't one or two, right? But it's not a crazy amount. Right. And I think auditors would be good because sometimes it can show you the crazy situation that happened right before you caught me slamming a guy to the ground, right? You didn't see that part. So I think it's fine. Some of the things that the auditors do with catching police officers up on more of like legality things, like officers aren't, they're not lawyers, right? So they're not going to know that what's the code number to such and such and such and such, right? I think that's a little unfair, but I don't mind auditors. I think it's a good thing. I think that's your right.
Yeah, there are a lot of good officers, man. I'll be honest, man. Most of my experiences in PG County, where police just got rocked like a year ago from I've had a lot of good experiences, man. Officers have been gracious to me. Tags were expired, didn't know it. Technically could have towed the car, took my license, said, "Look, man, I'm gonna follow you to how far do you live from here? I'm gonna follow you home to take care of it tomorrow." I've had, as a big black dude who expects to, most of my interactions are with nice officers, man. Don't get me wrong, I've had the Mark Furmans, but I've also had more of, with respect, treated me with respect, with and without my kids. So, cool. Another question, last one, because I'm gonna let you go, man. It's 9:30. I'm a night owl, so this ain't nothing to me. But it says, does the police force have a behavioral health department? That's a good question.
Yeah, they do. They do have it, but again, if you're mentally not fit, if they deem you mentally not fit, then you lose your career. So therefore, you'll have officers that will never go there, and they need to go there, and they need to go there. Right. They will never go there because they don't want to get their gun taken away from them. That's what they, that's their career. Right. So they won't. Right. They'll rather try to work through it themselves than have to go down there.
It sounds similar to somebody not wanting to expose their sin for losing their platform.
Yeah, the consequence.
Exactly. Yeah, good point. Like. Good point. Good point. Yeah, and it's you. I think that's why a lot of officers turn to things that they're not supposed to be doing because they can't get that mental health part of it, right? So they'll turn to the women.
Justifying.
Yeah, they'll turn to the women. They'll turn to the drugs. They'll turn to the alcohol. They'll turn to the all those different, streetcar racing and all those things because they're trying to quell, what they've seen because their emotions are just turned off. Right. And once the emotions are turned off, it's hard to turn them on and off.
Right.
So you just eventually learn to just forget about them. You know, I got to deal with it. I got to get here.
Yeah.
So,
How do you protect and serve when your character is the opposite?
yeah,
You know.
yeah, it's a great question.
Well,
But I think, that's one thing
crazy.
I think that should be mandatory is officers should have to go to see psychologists and not be, I don't want to say it, not have that gun taken, right? Because if somebody is at the point where they're mentally not there to be able to help the community, you know, I think that should be the case. But then
You'd
on
be
the other
saving somebody's
hand,
life.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well
so
said.
it's a tough one. Tough one.
Rashod, my brother, thank you, man. This was a
thank you,
great episode, man.
Yes, sir.
We'll probably have you back on. I know we're going to have you back on again because it's going to be something else that kicks off. But I'm just glad to get your wisdom, man. There's some other questions that I wanted to ask, but I was like, you know what? I'm sure we're going to have you back on again, man.
Yeah, great job, brother. Thank you.
We'll get to him next time.
Yeah, we might even bring on your buddy too, Strike, and have two of them on here.
Oh, that'd be dope.
That would be a good conversation, man, to have a couple guys. Oh, I got a couple. Listen, I got
Officer Weaver. He's back. He's back on the force too.
Weaver's back on. Okay,
he's out here. Yeah, he's out here.
I also got I got 2 or 3 officers in my church, man.
Nice.
So we might just do a little. Because I think it's good to hear, like, hey, man, what are they going through? I think they get overlooked, man. They get called as the villains. Yeah. It was like we were talking about one of the guys. He's in my core group. We met last night, and I was asking him, man, how's it been for you with all this stuff happening? And he was just sharing with us, like, you know, his wife is right there, and she's like, you know, he's you know, because we forget about the wives. They get scared. I can't imagine. Amy was probably at times like, man, what
all the time?
I'm sure she was worried. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you just can't. So I respect you, man. Appreciate you, brother, and grateful for you, man. Glad you were able to come on tonight, man. Thank your family for letting you be with us tonight. Cross-examiners, Rashod Coleman, man. You will see him again. Hope y'all heard and appreciated this. And me and Strat got 1 or 2 announcements for y'all. We're going to let Rashod go. My brother, thank you. Appreciate you, man. And
appreciate it, gentlemen.
Lord willing, Sunday.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Go Birds.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Crazy joint, bro.
It was good. It's good stuff, man.
I'm grateful that he came on, man. I
Me too.
appreciated your question.
Very well spoken. He did a great job. Great job.
Yeah,
does he be on podcasts and stuff like on the regular? Because Cass be fumbling on podcasts. You know what I'm saying? He didn't fumble at all. He held his own. Like,
well, look, man, he was, you know, he's an articulate brother, and then he left the police force and started to work for another organization.
Okay.
That was on a deeper level. So he's, you know, I don't know. I ain't gonna say because I don't know if I'm supposed to say.
So he don't be doing podcasts on the regular though.
That's not what I think. Now when
he did his thing, man. He did a good job.
When I called his wife Amy earlier, and asked would he be able to do it. And for the record, let me let y'all know, he does go to my church, his family, but he didn't speak like what I want. I wanted him to just speak. Like I wasn't like, you're not here as I'm not Pastor. You know, he ain't called me Pastor Kurt. He was like, Kurt, I'm not Pastor Kurt. I'm just right now. I want him to talk. I want to learn from him. He wasn't mentioning nothing like as if I wanted him to say certain things. And so, but when I called his wife, she said, "No, I think he would like this." And so, when I hit him, he was like, "Hey, I would love to do this, bro. Just tell me what the particulars are." And I said, "All right, here's what we going."
Yeah, I like because I listen to a lot of podcasts, man, and oftentimes when you have guests on your show, it doesn't always work out well because they're not ready for a podcast. Right. You know what I'm saying? My man did his thing, man. I was impressed. He did a good job.
He did a good job, man.
Thank you, brother.
We'll have him back on. It'll be interesting to have him and Weave on.
It would be
because you know, because it's, you know, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, it would definitely be. That'd be definitely fun.
But I think it would be cool to have a few guys on and just like let's just hear from. But he said some things, man, that I think are good for us to know. Like this is why these things happen.
Right.
You know, on a practical level, obviously, it's sin in the heart. You know, these things happen.
Right.
But then I think also just to remind, like, man, I never think like, hey, man, what has that officer seen earlier in the day? And the fact that you're discouraged from getting help because you could lose your job. No wonder the divorce rate is 76% high.
Right.
Because these guys have families and they go home. And then their wives are like, "You're not the person I married," or this, or you know, you don't take into account they start treating the family as a perp. You know what I'm saying? Like you're so desensitized to the emotional side, and then you know, I bet you he didn't say this, but he did allude to the officer's second marriage is usually another officer, and that divorce
Why you
rate
think?
is high.
Why you
Right.
think? Yeah.
Exactly, right? Because that's what happens. You commit adultery because the officers are so psychologically like damaged that the only people that can understand you is another officer.
Yeah,
right?
people that can relate to him.
They can relate to it. So it's crazy. It's more complicated than they support white supremacy.
That's one of the things that made me think about like the connection to big business, because when I remember working for a factory out here, and the divorce rate was like 80-something%.
Wow.
I mean, that's just the way it was. Wow. And then also productivity was it was a demand. You know, the reason the divorce rate was so high was because of how many hours we was at work.
Jeez.
And that's just the way it was. So
it's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Man, love this joint, man. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, appreciate you too, brother.
Go Eagles. Show. You know, we'll have another show next week before then, but I'm looking forward to it. Man, I hope y'all like this though. So I appreciate y'all. Thanks for liking, subscribe to the channel, join the Patreon, do whatever it is y'all do, but make sure y'all know we out here.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You can't handle the tooth. All right, I'm Kirk Kennedy. He's Strack the Wolverine.
Come on, man.
And we are out of here, y'all.
Yeah.
Grace and peace.